want to move back to Integrate this year, and I mean, you had 3 sessions at Integrate, and before we even try to deep dive a bit in your session, is that three sessions, is that a conference record?
Possibly, yeah. Well, but the bit you don't realise as well, though, is that the reason I was running around quite a lot is we also recorded about 20-25 podcasts at Integrate behind closed doors. So every time a speaker finished, we would grab them and we'd take them down the back corridor into another room and do a podcast recording. So it was actually quite a lot. I think I was on the host of about 10 podcasts, and Lex did another 10, something like that. And what was quite interesting actually is when you're trying to have a chat with somebody about their session, but you hadn't seen their session because you were doing another podcast, that was quite challenging. But at the same time, it was also good because I know enough about the topic to ask some really good questions, but really you just want people to tell you what they've done, you know. But it was fun. But the I guess the Integrate Summit. So I think at the end of the day, you've got to remember that the Integrate Summit's partially community and partially Kovai organise it and run it, and we have the option to sort of tell people a bit about what we're doing. So we had 3 sessions, and what I try to do is I want to, and hopefully people appreciate this, but I want to tell you about a product, but really I want to tell you in a way that means you're going to have some good value to go back with. And I think we see that because we have a lot of people come and say, can you tell me more about this? So what I always try and do is like, here's a real world scenario. I don't think there's really a great way to sort this problem out. Here's what we're doing. It may help. So that's really why if you take the cost session, I was trying to tell you about here's how we saved a company a load of money. And actually, I'm a big believer that in the cost space, integration people can really be effective there because, we've talked about this a lot. The idea of I go in as an integration team, have a good connection with all the different teams and what they're doing. And if I can show best practice of how you manage cost and integration, other people want to know what you're doing because they've got cost problems. They don't know how to fix it. But I think the integration person understanding dependencies makes you have all the right soft skills and quite a lot of the technical skills to solve that problem as well.
I think it's completely normal also because we are all using tools. Even if you're using Azure, it's just a stack of tools.
Exactly.
If you're using like Kovai product or any other product in the market, you're just trying to communicate how can I deliver value using those tools, because I'm not trying to create a new tool. I am trying to make sure that the customer gets the best out of it. So I think it's the best way to actually deliver this message.
And a lot of these skills are very transferable. It's like we spotted a few good ones last year. It's amazing when you look at the cost side of things. Like integration teams, in my experience, the integration team costs are just a tiny fraction of a customer's overall Azure cost. But I think some of the things you see are really applicable. Like being on top of your SQL database is a big cost area potentially. And then I've looked at like other teams, and the biggest problem I see is people deploy stuff and they never then go 3 months later, did we deploy the right size thing? Because we're already doing the next project, and the team who deployed that app originally might not even exist anymore. And you just see scenarios where the app's being used like 10% of what they scaled it for. And this is my thing, when you're doing like, you guys as a consultancy working with Azure, if your customer spends $100,000 a month on Azure, but say 20-25% of that's inefficient, that's $25,000 a month they could be spending building new integrations, because that money can be reallocated to other stuff.
And there is a big challenge also on like you need to tell if something that already costs this $100 a month, or as you said, this customer, they didn't really request a change, you didn't request a new integration. You can see that this costs a lot. You need to rebuild this to make it cost, and then you end up with a conversation. Why do you want me to rebuild this? Why should I pay you to do something that's actually working? And you need to actually bring up the cost card, because this is actually, why do you want to do that? It's just to reduce the cost.
Yeah, and I guess that, I mean, we all three here agree. But Mike, you've been in the integration business for so long, and now you're working with the cost. And I mean, all of the first session you had was regarding cost. But how would you say, like, the typical integration technician, engineer, or architect, what would your advice be for them to actually get involved in the cost discussions, get involved with using a proper tool like Covai's tool to actually get on top of costs? What would you say to them?
I think you've just got to do it regularly, but the most common thing I see is people review costs when senior management complain about the size of the bill. If you can look at costs, and they also look at it at such a high level, we look at our overall Azure cost, and if you say we spend 100,000 a month on Azure, but that doesn't really mean anything, because you've probably got so many teams and so many applications that it's just a number, and you need to sort of break it up and start getting teams to look at this idea of how much are we spending. And actually, Ahmed and I have talked a lot about this idea of cost as part of a sprint retrospective. So how many times do your team get the end of the sprint and go, right, here's our current running costs for dev and test, maybe even prod as well if you've already got stuff in prod, and can we take any items into the next sprint to optimize our costs? And I think for me, what I'm really enjoying at the minute is I guess my background, where people found my community content interesting, because I always try to focus on those higher level sort of where do I use what questions, because I think I feel like there's always been loads of people who talk about how do I do this specific thing with a logic app, or I had this problem and here's how I solved it. And there's some really great people at talking about that kind of content, but I always preferred the where do I use a logic app and where do I use a function, because I can solve the same problem with both of them, but it would work in different ways and it would have different outcomes, and other factors come into play.